Hello and welcome to the AnVIL. This video is an overview of the user journey when submitting data to AnVIL on GCP. AnVIL data in GCP will reside in the Teradata repository, or TDR. The Teradata repository is designed to make a more fair data storage solution. Fair data are findable, accessible, designed to work with a range of operating systems or platforms, and reproducible. Fair features of TDR include the following. TDR enables reproducible analysis with static data releases. TDR is versatile, with a fine-grained organization of the data. Data is more searchable. The data repository allows faceted, index search across datasets. Access controls are more granular. The Data Explorer includes built-in subsetting functionality to share exactly the right data subsets with distinct collaborators. Data access is streamlined via integration with duos. Storing datasets in TDR saves money. Data snapshots avoid creating and paying to store extra copies of the large primary data files. And the data repository has better mechanisms for tracking and versioning, including consent withdrawals. Finding data in AnVIL. The new AnVIL Data Explorer lets users search for exactly the data they need. It allows faceted index searches across datasets for custom building cohorts. Searches leverage access controls built into TDR and dbGaP or duos. Keywords and conditions for searching and filtering are on the left of the Explorer. Using common ontologies helps harmonize datasets and enables cross-dataset searches. Here's an expanded view of the reported ethnicity group from the left column. TDR displays a list of which datasets are available based on the selected criteria in the center of the page. Users can easily see which datasets they're granted access to and which they can apply to for access. Data submitters can subset and share parts or all of the dataset with distinct collaborators. Duos integration enforces authorization. The current submission process for TER is designed to be as similar as possible to the previous process where data was stored in AnVIL workspaces. Here is a summary of the differences. In the workspace model, datasets are stored and managed in individual release workspaces. Users access the datasets through these AnVIL workspaces. In the new framework, datasets will ultimately be stored in TDR as snapshots only. Individuals will use the Data Explorer to search across snapshots and can then export the data to their AnVIL workspaces for analysis. Previously, datasets were discoverable using the AnVIL Dataset catalog. In TDR, data will be more visible and findable through the AnVIL Data Explorer. Access control of data in workspaces is still managed using workspace authorization domains. Once in TDR, access controls are assigned to the dataset and subsets and follow the data as it moves to other locations. For example, cloning a snapshot in a workspace assigns the data control requirements to the workspace. Deposit workspaces are only a temporary holder for data with a simplified folder hierarchy structure and data model. This will be covered in an upcoming slide. And finally, while dataset workspaces included dataset attributes, TDR will include a more efficient method of capturing your important data attributes and metadata using a new minimal recommended data model. Now, let's cover a typical data submission journey from start to finish. This is a high-level overview of the typical TDR data submission process. Once you've gotten approval from the AnVIL to host your data, you'll stage data in an AnVIL deposit workspace. Next, the AnVIL Data Ingestion team ingests data from the deposit workspace into TDR. Different consent groups within a deposit workspace are separated into different datasets. We'll cover how to do that in a later section. Last, the AnVIL Data Ingestion team creates immutable or static snapshots that will then be findable for analysis in the AnVIL Data Explorer. Submitting incremental data follows the same flow, with the data submitter depositing new data to a new deposit workspace. The AnVIL team then ingests the data to an existing dataset and creates new snapshots. Before we go through data submission and release, let's go over snapshot access permissions. For purposes of permissions, datasets are divided into snapshots by FIS-ID. Snapshots are created with data access controls for the following groups. AnVIL admins are the custodians. PIs, or the PIs designated data submitters or tier group, are readers. AnVIL developers, everyone on the dbGaP access list, and the duos group, which is added during the data release, are also readers. Snapshots can be shared with read access, no sharing, and compute off or lock permission. Note that data will be protected when it's shared. AnVIL applies the access permissions automatically where the data resides when a snapshot is imported to a workspace. We'll now go step by step through the release process for AnVIL on GCP. Note the colours of this image and the relationship between the groups in the upcoming slides. Grey is the activity of the data submitter. Orange is dbGaP. Blue is the AnVIL ingestion team. And purple is the data user. His submission process assumes that the AnVIL Review Board has approved the study to be hosted in AnVIL through dbGaP. For new projects that have not yet been approved, data submitters would complete an AnVIL onboarding application. In the first 3 steps, you'll work with dbGaP. The journey starts when you reach out to dbGaP to register the study. The registration process requires approval by the Genomic Program Administrator, or GPA. Registration may take several months. Registration is complete once the GPA has signed off on the study and the status is completed by GPA. At this point, the consent groups have been assigned, which is required for data submission to AnVIL. This is the point where you would reach out to AnVIL to start data ingestion. You'll contact the AnVIL support team by sending an email to anvil-data@broadinstitute.org. This generates a Send Us ticket for tracking and coordinating the next steps through the lifetime of the release. We'll go over detailed steps for the ingestion process in the next section. After data ingestion, AnVIL tells you that the data are released and coordinates any data cleanups. Last but not least is the data release to users on the portal. The next slides will focus the 3 main data ingestion steps. These are performed with or by the AnVIL ingestion team. The steps include staging the data, ingesting into TDR, and releasing the data to the research community. You'll be an active participant with AnVIL in the staging and release steps and with dbGaP as part of the release process. Once you notify AnVIL that the GPA has signed off on the study, AnVIL will begin the data staging process. You'll be responsible for staging the data in the deposit workspace. The AnVIL ingestion team will create a deposit workspace and contact you to confirm user access and timeline expectations. AnVIL ingestion team will provide guidance on staging the data, including how to structure the study data in a data model and how to set up the directory folders in the deposit workspace. You'll stage the data in the deposit workspace by setting up a cloud directory with folders following a particular hierarchy and uploading OMIC data files and metadata, clinical and phenotypic data tables in the deposit workspace. The next 4 slides show how to create the required folder hierarchy and deposit the data in the deposit workspace. The URL is anvil.tira.bio. You can continue using your existing Tira account to access your assigned deposit workspace. There's no need to set up a GCP billing project because AnVIL will create and fund the deposit workspace. The deposit workspace storage needs to follow a specific directory structure, which you'll set up first. To access the workspace storage directory, go to the data page and click on the file icon at the bottom left. This will expose the full directory of the workspace cloud storage. To create folders, click on the new folder icon. Name the top-level folder as the physID followed by the consent code. For instance, in this image, Dataset 1 corresponds to one physID, one consent code. Within the same deposit workspace, Dataset 2 is a different consent code. Within each top-level folder, you'll create 2 separate subfolders, one for omics data files, named datab_files, and one for the clinical, phenotypic, and metadata files, named tabular_data. Then you'll upload the files from your data model into the folders you created. You can upload smaller files right in AnVIL. For large numbers or files greater than about 3 GB, use gcloud storage commands in a command line interface. You'll find links to Tira support docs with step-by-step instructions in the comments below the video. Let's clarify the deposit workspace access controls. AnVIL admins have admin permission. PIs, or designated data submitters, are writers on the deposit workspace by default. Some caveats on securing controlled data on GCP. Deposit workspaces are protected with authorization domains that provide security and logs data access required per NIH security policy. Let's talk about best practices for using the deposit workspace. Data submitters are expected to abide by the following guidelines. Only upload data that applies to the current approved data submission. Only upload data within the data size limit approved by the AnVIL program. Release data in a timely manner per NIH GDS guidelines. Without express written permission from AnVIL, you cannot egress data from the deposit workspace. Cloning the deposit workspace is also not allowed because at this time, access to data tables will not be protected in clones. Note that deposit workspaces will be deleted after data are released. Let's talk about Dataset metadata. If you're familiar with AnVIL data in GCP workspaces, you'll remember data attributes, which were collected from the data submitter and included in the workspace dashboard attributes table. This is going away in TDR. Attribute data will be linked to the snapshot and findable in the AnVIL Data Explorer. Capturing and presenting these data points is currently in development with Duos as a possible solution. Also a change from the workspace model. The About the Workspace section in the Workspace dashboard will not be in snapshots. Again, how we would present this information is in development. Next is Dataset ingestion. Most of the work will be handled by the AnVIL ingestion team. Once all data has been successfully loaded into the deposit workspace, the AnVIL support team will coordinate a final sign-off with you before beginning. When that's in hand, they will ingest the data into TDR. The AnVIL support team will send you a checklist for sign-off. This is an example of the content we'll seek. Confirm AnVIL is an external data source on each FIS ID. Confirm there is no personal health information in the dataset. Review and confirm the accuracy of the deposit workspace data, as well as the FIS ID, consent code and data types. The team will also make sure all data tables are present and accurate. In addition to the checklist, you'll complete a summary table shown at the bottom on this slide and designate a person to confirm that the dataset is complete and can be released. This acts as a final signature. Note that snapshots are immutable. Making changes after release will require a new snapshot or version update. Once the final sign-off is received, the AnVIL ingestion team proceeds with the release of the data. To release the data, the AnVIL ingestion team creates a snapshot of the data. AnVIL ingestion team then coordinates with dbGaP to establish access controls. AnVIL ingestion team takes care of a number of details. Reach out to the phenotype curator at dbGaP to change the status of the study to released. The data submitter will be included on emails sent to dbGaP. Link dbGaP data access list to a dbGaP tier group and add the tier group to the snapshot. Ensure the Duos ID is added to the snapshot. Lock the snapshot so no one may add, delete, or modify data. And finally, add a release tag to the snapshot, which will signal adding it to the catalogue. At this point, THE dataset will appear on the AnVIL Data Explorer. Once the dataset is released, AnVIL will notify you that the dataset is available to the research community for access requests through dbGaP. Note that THE deposit workspace will be deleted 30 days after the release. The AnVIL ingestion team will alert you of the deletion date. On data release, THE AnVIL ingestion team will remove all access to the deposit workspace. This is to allow time for users to alert the data submitter or AnVIL of any issues with the released dataset. On the deletion date, AnVIL will notify you that the deposit workspace was deleted. This wraps up the presentation of the data submission process. If you have any questions, please reach out to the AnVIL team at anvil-data@broadinstitute.org. Thank you for watching.